All right, welcome back. We're turning our attention now to human capital development vis-a-vis 2019, and what should the political parties or their candidates be focusing on, especially from where we currently are. We've got Fawehinmi here with us. He's a human resources consultant. Thank you for coming on this one, and compliment of the season to you.
Same to you. Merry Christmas. Nice to be here.
You know, some time ago, I think the last time you were here, there was this stat, I don't know if it changed too at the time, where the number of out-of-school children was a little over 10 million. But now UBEX is quoting some data that is now about 13 plus million who are out of school. And there are lots of people who keep looking, waiting to see what will the politicians say, what will they do about that big question of human capital development. You've looked into this particular matter. What's your impression?
My impression is that Merry Christmas. We should be happy today. Unfortunately, we're talking about education, which should not make us happy in Nigeria.
Wow.
So there's a lot of confusion around the exact number of people that are out of school. One, there are various standards for measurement. So there are standards that measure people that should be in basic education as a benchmark, while some people use primary education. So that's where you have various figures. Second thing is also the fact that you have figures that has come from 10.5 to some people quoting 12.5, some people even quoting 13.5. The UBEC quoted based on a projection. The fact is that we don't know the number. Let's remember we don't even know how many we are in Nigeria.
So no matter what NPC says?
The last time they said something about our population was when? So they counted us. Well, let's assume the counting, of course, using Lagos as a big case study, the counting Lagos did and the one they did was not the same. So that shows that something that they counted us, and we have been doing projections since then. But the standard practice is that you're supposed to do population actual counting periodically, which we have not done. So we are working on projects. So we don't know how many children are out of school. But what we know is that 3 countries account for the bulk of the children out of school in the world, and Nigeria is one of them, which is very, very unfortunate. The bigger challenge is the fact that not only are these children not in school, they have been exposed to what reduces their capacity. Because of the fact that if a child is not in school,
Capacity
where is it?
In what?
Capacity
Mental
to fulfill,
capacity? Okay.
in all dimensions, cognitive, mental, psychological, sociological, their self-esteem and everything. The bigger challenge is that those children are Nigerians. Those children that we're ignoring, in the next 5, 6 years, they'll be 18 years old. Those children will vote. And we want them to vote rationally. So the point is that we're just laying a trap for ourselves. And the bigger challenge is that over 70%, I think it's 65, 70% of that estimate are females. Now, when a girl doesn't go to school, research has shown certain things that will happen to our children. 1, the likelihood of our children being immunized is very low. 2, the likelihood of our children going beyond secondary school is very low. 3, the likelihood of our children being LD is very low. The likelihood of our losing a child before age 5 increases. And the likelihood of her becoming poor increases. Because what has been found is that for every year a girl goes to school globally, she increases her earning capacity by 10%. So that's what we are doing for ourselves. Now, those girls are there, those boys are there. Fun fact is, if they don't go to school, they will marry soon. So while our own children are in school, they are marrying. So their children will be older than our children. Now, because they'll get married early, they will have more children. So if your child and my child have 3, 4, and managing the economy, the number of children they have, their own children will be more, 6, 7, 8. So what is going to happen is that those children are in the minority today. The 10.5 million, we will assume they're in the minority. But in the next generation, they'll be in the majority. Reason being that the children of the educated one are going to have fewer children compared to them. So we're going to, if we don't do anything quickly in Nigeria, what is likely going to happen in the next couple of years? The average child will not be educated. And that's the more dangerous part of it.
But which one weighs more? Because while we're talking about the number that's out of school, those in school, some will say they are more or less not in school because the quality of learning is nothing, is not there. Yeah. So which is more dangerous?
Well,
or should we even be asking which is more dangerous?
Maybe it's like trying to say, let's compare between taking hydrochloric acid and taking sulfuric acid. I mean, both of them are
some
acidic.
have never tried taking
But the question is, yes. So one of the things the world is, you see, Nigeria as we go to 2019, Nigeria needs to accept one fact. It seems our political leaders are not current in terms of the requirements of education. So the Millennium Development Goal, which was the initial target, it's been changed to become the Sustainable Development Goal, was targeting school enrollment, because the assumption of the world is that if we enroll more children in school, we'll do well. And so we're rushing. Of course, school feeding that we're still doing is an enrollment initiative. But the world has realized that, listen, we have more children in school globally, but they are not learning. I mean, there's a global ranking of countries. Unfortunately, Nigeria is not one of the countries being ranked. I wish and I hope we get ranked. It's called PISA, that ranks children across board. What has been found is that between some countries, the difference in learning is over 2 years of gap. So a boy in primary 4 in the country A and a boy in primary 4 in country B, they are both in primary 4, but the learning gap between the two of them is over 2 years. Somebody did a study some years back and said a 4-year-old child, a child in year 4 in Nigeria has the level of education of a child in year 1 in some other countries. That is why we move them. So this boy is in year 4, but actually is nominally in year 4, but is really in year 1. So that's why we move him, he gets to secondary school. That means when he gets to GS1, he's effectively in primary 2. That's why the number of people that have to write JAMB more than once and why is increasing. The reason is that by the time the guy gets to SS3, he's effectively in GS3. So when he writes JAMB the first time, he's writing as a GSS3 student from his mental capability. He's going to fail. So he goes to do remedial studies that makes him become a SS1 student. Then he goes to do a third year, and somebody tells you I've done JAMB 3 times, or I've done Y 4 times. It's because of that gap. So I agree with you. We're dealing with 2 problems. The children not in school and the ones in school are not learning. However, from the social point of view, the child in school who is not learning is better than the child not in school. Number 1, he's engaged. So he's not likely going to get recruited for crime. Number 2, he has social learning going on because of the fact that one boy teaches him something, another boy teaches him whatever. Number 3, he's developing social skills. Because in school, you negotiate, there's a class captain. He's developing leadership capability. So that boy who is not learning may become the class captain. And suddenly develops that capability. Maybe he becomes a politician eventually. So you realize that the school system, beyond the academic learning, there's quite a lot of things that happen. So if we have to have a choice, unfortunately, it should not be a choice we should make. It's better for us to have every child in school. Every child should be in school. But you know the funny thing? As far back as 60 years ago, parents were jailed for not sending their children to school.
In Nigeria?
In Nigeria. Interestingly, the presidential aspirant of the PDP said his father was jailed because of that. So if 60, 70 years ago it was a crime for a parent not to send a child to school, the Child Right Act criminalizes it. So why are we still having a conversation of 12 billion not in school?
It turns out that I think the first stat that they had of that 10 million plus, they said 69% of those kids were in the north.
Yeah, I mean, in the north, again, it comes back to where they were jailing parents.
So what's going wrong?
We're not jailing parents again. Let's go back to doing that. Let's create consequences for not taking your child to school. Let's take consequences for parents who send their child to go and work when they should be in school. Let's create consequences for employers who employ these girls and these boys as house helps, as whatever they employ them as.
2 layers there you pointed about. If we could look at, I'm not sure we have any stats on this, there are states who, I think they're trying to do something. They say, look, a child who's of school age must be in school at a certain period. They must not be hawking. So have you looked at any of those states? Is it working?
The scenario is so bad that whatever you do works.
Wow.
Whatever you do works. I mean, and that's why I tell people when we talk about the education situation in Nigeria that you don't need to do anything big. Whatever, in fact, if this Christmas people are going all over the place doing stuff, just go to a school and just paint a wall. It's going to have an impact because it's bad. Now, so some of the schools that are doing something like that, I mean, so let's give you the example of Lagos State. Because, you know, we're talking about children, we're talking about education. We're not talking about literacy, which affects everybody. So a state like Lagos, for example, 4 years ago, had 3 million illiterates in Lagos. Center of excellence, 3 million. That's about the population of Dubai. Illiterate, 3 million. I want you to imagine what it is, 3 million. Some of them drive, and then you're surprised they are not obeying traffic signals. They can't. They are illiterate. Some of them work. So But Lagos started this Ekonke program that's created a lot of adult literacy programs that is training a lot, which is making a lot of, so it makes a lot of difference. But you see, the point is that we don't have a sense of urgency around it. So I want to propose and suggest that we should create the carrot and stick approach. Encourage people to send their children to school and create sanctions. The governor should be at the forefront. I grew up in Ibadan. I'm an Ibadan boy. There was a governor we had in Ibadan when I was young called Paul Tafa. When he's going to work in Agodi in Ibadan, and he sees a child late for school, not going to school, late for school, he will pull off the road and physically discipline that child for being late to school. We're not talking about what he does to those that are not going to school. Now, so that's significant body language to show the seriousness of it. We had a governor after him. 1979, we had Uncle Bolage. That's what we used to call him in Oyo State. At the beginning of the term, Uncle Bolage writes letters to all the students, welcoming them. Have you ever thought about the fact that you can't quote President Buhari on this out of children issue, education issue? I dare say, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, you can't quote a sentence related to him talking about the seriousness about our out of children school. So there's a whole lot of denial. You can't quote most state governors. One single quote where a governor acknowledges that we have a problem with out of school children and his commitment to do something about it. Yes.
I think there must have been, but I'll double check.
Yeah, so
that's why some of them are doing something about it.
No, they are doing something because they are doing many things. We're talking about priorities. I mean, somebody is doing flyovers compared to children out of school. They're not the same priority. Somebody is doing bus stops compared to doing... So it's a question of priority. The issue is that we are not prioritizing the situation we have found ourselves.
Speaking about this, because again, we also like to look at possible solutions when we talk about this. But when we parents... yes, Auntie, I said that. But if parents were to take a step, like you said, you don't have to do anything big in any school.
Yeah.
Paint a wall.
Yeah.
It signs, it could do a lot. Because there are people who are kind of torn between two. What do I do? How do I? And it always looks so big to do something. So now you know if you paint a wall, you can have an impact. Today, you spoke about people who have to go do JAM 2, 3, 4 times. But the reports today, parents actually encourage these things. They do get mercenaries for their kids to do JAM or do those kind of exams. If parents were to take it a little more seriously, saying, listen, well, I have to do what I can, because in some other climes, some of these people are self-taught. What should they be doing about this?
Okay, so we're talking to parents. Maybe we'll talk to government
afterwards.
So I think the first thing that parents need to do is to take the education of their children very seriously. I'm a Yoruba man. What we say is that a child that is not educated will sell the house you built. It's just a matter of time. Probably think about it.
Even the educated was said this, they sell things.
Think about it. Look at the rich guys in our father's generation, our grandfather's generation. Their children are not the rich guys in this generation. If you're mentioning the names of millionaires in Nigeria, their grandfathers were not. The millionaires 30, 50, 60 years ago are not, their children have not been able to move the world to the next level. So that talks about education and legacy. So we must remember what that quotation, that education is the greatest legacy. So number one, prioritize your children's education. If you can't, and I'm not saying schooling, I'm saying education. I always try to emphasize that. So it's not about taking your child to the best school, it's ensuring your child is learning. If you can't afford an expensive school, you can teach your child. So you take your child to a school that is maybe what you can afford, but you think is not enough, you can decide to come home early every day and invest 2 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes to get the person to learn. You can get the person a lesson. So prioritize your child's education. Number two, be real with yourself. If your child is academically deficient, don't just sit down and beat the child or complain. Look for professional help. Let somebody help you assess the child. This child may be dyslexia, for example. Or this child's smartness may not be in education. So you may have this boy who is struggling with maths, English, but is very good at drawing. So find a way to start to channel resources there. I think the other thing I also want to say, and the last thing, is that every parent should be involved in the schooling of their children. Parents and fathers, to be more precise, there's what they call Parents Teachers Association. What I've come to realize has become Mothers Teacher Association. There's nothing cool about a father who doesn't go for PTA meetings. It's irresponsible, it's unprofessional, and it doesn't show you as doing the right choices. Go to PTA meetings. Now, when you go to those PTA meetings, that's what you can use to influence school policy. That's what you can use to influence what happens in your school.
So it's not enough to be there and just sit in the crowd?
No. There's no point say and sit in the crowd. You know, some people will say not talk. Some people will say, well, you know, I don't want to rock the boat. Listen, it's your child's boat. Rock it. If you don't rock it, somebody rocks it for you. So go to PTA meeting, let there. Create a relationship with your child teacher. That's the last part about this engagement with the school. Many parents are in competition with the child's teacher.
With the child's teacher?
Yeah, which they don't know. So, you know, if you have a child who is 4 or 5 years, the child will likely tell you once, my teacher told me that I should pronounce Lagos as Lagos, not Lagos. So the child is bringing a contrast between what you taught him or her and what the teacher is teaching. Some parents now say, I am your father. He's Lagos. No. Help the child understand that you and the teacher are on the same side. We have had cases of parents who go to their children's school to go and beat up teachers. You are not wise. That's not wisdom. Wisdom is you and your child's teacher are in partnership. We have the same goal. So you must work together. So if your child comes and says, my teacher taught me this, that you didn't teach the child, instead of arguing with that child, call the teacher. And ask the teacher, my son said this, what do you think about it? And maybe as the child resumes January, you can actually send a gift to your child.
So what should we be demanding of government or those who want to become leaders?
What should we demand of government? Number one is their responsibility. One of the biggest deception about those of us in the private sector is that we feel we can reform education. No, we can't. It's never going to happen. We must get government to take responsibility for education. In Nigeria, and based on our constitutional arrangement, the 3 tiers of government have rules for education. Federal government has rules for policy setting. State government actually is the biggest person in education. Because it's only the state government that is authorized by law to have universities, we have polytechnics, we have college education, and secondary school. By policy, federal government should not have secondary schools, except the aberration called federal government colleges. I'm a proud student of one, but when we have federal government colleges, there was a reason for that. It was as a result of the Civil War, there was a need to create unity schools. We are no more in war. They should send those schools back to secondary school. There is no point having federal governments having secondary schools. Now, so the biggest level of government that has responsibility for education is the state government. But as usual, there's nothing we have put in the hands of our state government that has prospered. State Electoral Commission, the most ridiculous elections are done by State Electoral Commission. We just had an election last Tuesday in Lagos State. The winner won with less than 2,000 votes. Education in the hands of state government, as usual, they have not done what they should do. Local government also have roles for for primary schools. So we must ensure everybody plays their role. We must ensure we demand of the parastatals in the education sector to deliver the goods. TED Fund, UBEC, NUC. I mean, ask yourself this very basic question. TED Fund and UBEC controls billions of naira. Who are they accountable to? The funniest thing is that you know how TED Fund makes its money. It makes its money from the private sector. Channels, television, you contribute to TED Fund. So maybe what we should start doing from next year, and I hope it's possible, every month, the TED Fund CEO should be here. I will stay on that side, and you guys will stay. Is your money, is my money.
Let's talk about that when we come back from this break in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back, and we're winding down now. What should we be doing with TED Fund?
Okay, one of the things we should be doing with TED Fund is act for increased accountability. And I'm requesting if channels will take on that gauntlet for next month. Once every quarter, the TED Fund man should be here. When we bring the TED Fund this week, we should bring ITF the next week. 1% of our payroll goes to ITF. They should also come. When we do the following, we should bring PTDF. Certain percentage of the oil industry money goes for skills development. I'm mentioning sectors and organizations set up to manage funds. When we finish that, we will bring UBEC. Because those ones are collecting money, it's first line charge from our federation account. So for TED Fund is demand for accountability. There are people that represent organizations on the board of TED Fund. They need to be more alive to their duties. So for example, they may say, oh, there should be a representative for the sake of ICANN. That person should stand up for probity, for accountability. That's facing TED Fund. We need to also face the universities who are supposed to access funds for TED Fund. TED Fund was a body set up to finance infrastructure, research, book development, staff development in our universities. But our universities have also not been able to access money for TED Fund.
Why is that so?
Why is because our universities equally are not accountable. The process in TED Fund is that if you are giving money, you're supposed to show how you're using the money, finish using the money to the stage you have been given before you can access the following year. Case in point, University of Ibadan. A report came out a couple of months back. University of Ibadan has not been able to access 3 years of TED fund. Is it 3 or 2 years? I think it's 3 years of TED fund. Why? The last time they got money, they could not account for it. Now, they have accounted for it because they have built the structures. So TED fund went to inspect. However, when TED fund got there, they said the standard of construction is below their level. A university built something.
It's below the level.
A TED fund said it's below level. You can talk about capacity. A university that is responsible for training people builds a structure, and someone says it's not accountable. So we must focus on the university. So ASU, SANU, Satura, and all the people association facing the federal government for more funds. Face your school. What is your school doing about assessing and reporting and effective implementation of funds they have received?
So at the end of the day, it's when you say ASU facing federal government, the Ministry of Education is supposed to be like the umbrella supervising all of this and ensuring that there's a level of accountability. Is it that there's a failing somewhere? There's the linkages between the ministries, the different agencies, and the institutions.
Globally, the Ministry of Education in every country is one of the biggest in terms of parastatal setups and all of that. And you need somebody who has capacity to manage all of that. I think the Minister for Education has not done a lot enough to manage the moving parts in education. So there is, and you know,
but why do we always look at the minister? They are directors, there is a permanent secretary. So there's, before the minister is an appointee, but there are people who are there consistently for 30 years. Some of them have been there for 25, 30 years. So if they are not working, if they are not doing their bit, that minister who is appointed for 2, 3, 4 years, at least another person comes in. How do you expect this?
So if they are not working, they report to the minister. And an employee who is not working because his boss has not done anything about it.
And the minister can't fire.
Why not?
Civil service
He can
rules.
recommend for firing.
Okay.
He can move them to one outstation in somewhere at the backwaters of wheresoever. I mean, you can create accountability. You know, the point is that the Minister for Education needs to develop capacity to manage moving parts. That's the biggest role. If you check out national policy on education, the biggest role of the federal government is policy setting, which is about managing moving parts. So let me give you an instance. The federal government owns National Open University of Nigeria. It's owned by the federal government, right? The federal government owns Nigerian Universities Commission, owned by the federal government. The federal government owns the Council of Legal Education in Nigeria. So I'm talking about what happened before last month. So students started studying law. For students to study law in National Open University, they needed approval from NUC. NUC didn't give them approval. They graduated. The National Council for Legal Education says they can't go to law school. You went to a federal government school to study law, accredited by a federal government agency. Another federal government body says you can't continue as a lawyer. That is not a problem of a director. That's a problem of the leader with capacity to manage moving parts.
I'm afraid that's how far we can go. But I think there's something that's been done about that law. But
Yes.
I'll check.
Yes, the law was signed.
Yeah,
The
the
president
now.
signed law. Great, big ups to him for doing that.
All right, then. So perhaps on a happy note, then, this Christmas, Boxing Day. Thank you very much indeed, Yomi Fawehinmi, Human Resources Consultant. And that's the show today. Well, thank you all for watching. Yes, you can go ahead and be happy, as we will attempt to do. That's the show. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.